Mark, hi, good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm in Cape Town. I've got a little place down here, and I'm looking over a clear sky and the ocean. And let me say this: my son's studying at Stellenbosch, and I was talking to someone there just yesterday, and they're saying there are a lot of Chinese and other students have arrived in Stellenbosch to study there. And when asked what they found most remarkable about Stellenbosch, they said it was the blue sky. There's a
Okay,
clear
wow.
blue sky. And we take
Huh.
these things for granted, eh? But it was a beautiful, clear blue sky day yesterday in Stellenbosch. And there are people in China who have never seen a blue sky, living in industrial areas and things of that nature. And so
Yes,
that was the standout
abiding memory. Yeah,
difference.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing, hey?
which is pretty cool.
The
We take it for granted.
I've always said this is my theory about Cape Town. I've
Yeah,
always said the two things that people dislike most about Cape Town are the best things about Cape Town. So the first is people say it's so windy here. It's just the wind
yeah.
blows, and it is true that I don't think that you are a real Cape Townian unless you've been in a southeaster where you think
Southeaster. Yeah,
my house is going to take off. I'm no
yeah,
longer going to have a house. I'm going to go flying over the mountain.
yeah. Not to mention the people in the shacks. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So that's the one thing. But the good thing about the southeaster is that it does blow away all of the cobwebs.
yeah.
It keeps the city very fresh. The second thing about Cape Town, which I think is just fabulous, is the cold sea. Because people don't
Yeah.
realize to what extent it makes Cape Town really a fantastically pleasant city, even on a very hot day. Cape Town is like air conditioned. It's like the automatic air conditioning. It's glorious, really.
You have extraordinary perspective. The one thing that most people complain about here is the traffic, and I've said that there are really two steps that you have to do to sort out the traffic and make
Right.
it comparable to Joburg. You have to remove the mountain and fill up the sea.
Yes.
Okay, because then you have, you have 360
Yeah.
degrees of access and
Simple.
problem solved. So they're not prepared to do that. But you can't go to Cape Town without having a discussion about Johannesburg versus Cape Town, blah, blah, blah. Despite the fact that the
Yes.
Bulls gave the Western Province a proper hiding over the weekend. But, and I said, this was my summary. I said, the difference is that Cape Town's beauty is above the surface and Johannesburg's is below. Okay.
Wow.
Now,
Okay.
I, and then someone challenged me because Joburg's wealth comes from underground and Cape Town's wealth comes from above ground. Okay.
Yes.
And so I then started thinking about whether that's still true. How much do we mine? Someone begged the question. We used to mine, I don't know, nearly 3 tons of gold a day back 50 years ago. Do you have any feel for that number at the moment? Are we still a mining town?
No. I think we have certain minerals which have continued
Yeah,
and we're still mining at a furious rate. And they are
yeah,
platinum and manganese.
yeah,
And they are, oddly enough, the minerals that you really can't get anywhere else.
yeah. That's cool.
Which is,
Natural
yeah, no, no,
monopolies.
no,
I'm all
no,
for it.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Can't regulate against natural monopolies. We'll get into tariffs just now. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
yes, okay.
And beneficiation.
But but the total tonnage of what South Africa's mining has reduced, and the total value of what South Africa has is mining has reduced by about half over the last 30 years. And the
Cool.
value is reduced mainly because we're mining too little gold.
Yeah,
And that's because we
yeah.
can't, because it's now 4 kilometers underground. So that's
It's
that
getting
little
deeper and it's a bit hot down there.
yeah,
I went down a
yes.
mine once for a vac job when I was a student, and I went down Kloof Mine to level 40 or whatever it was. If you want to lose weight, go down the mine, okay?
Okay. Yes.
And then crawl between the stopes that are slowly but surely being compressed. Anyway, so Joburg's going to lose that distinction, sadly. And then what's it about? I saw a really quite traumatizing video of Pretoria, of Tshwane. And it really has
Right.
degenerated in some areas quite rapidly into some sort of stripped slum, if you will, where all the wood and all the roof tiles and things have been stolen and so on. Anyway, I'm looking for the turning point. That's what I'm doing, Tim. I'm looking for these turning points. And
Right.
I was
And are
pleased
you
to
finding
see,
them?
but I'll say this, Treasury, I saw in an article in Business Day this morning, has now
Right.
asked for external experts to advise them on municipalities, okay, on the financing of municipalities. And for example,
Right.
the municipalities collectively, according to this article, owe Eskom 94 billion rand, okay,
Yes.
which they aren't going to pay anytime soon. And so,
Right.
first point for me is I applaud National Treasury for seeking expert advice. Okay, because
Right.
what's the downside? As long as you don't pay them or something like that, or as long as it's real, as long as the advice, as long as you get value for money, let me say. But it brings into focus another number,
Which is
and it brings into focus a general point I want to make this morning. The other number is that I see Transnet has just raised another 90 or got another 95 billion allocation from government.
yes.
Now, I started doing some little sums because I'm childish that way. I do sums, okay? And I figured
Sad.
out that if you earned a rand a second, okay, to start
Right.
repaying that debt, it would
Yes.
take you 3,012 years to repay. Okay.
Oh my God. That's
So
incredible.
that's working at a rand a second to repay it. Doesn't he mind? That's not good. Despite the increase in coal volumes at Richards Bay Terminal, despite the promise of further trade, how are we
Right.
managing it, Tim? How are we with all this leakage and inefficiency and theft and corruption and absence of understanding of value? How do we still squeak through? It can't be the weather and
Oh,
the gold, man.
I can tell you. I can tell you that quite simply. South
Okay.
Africans. It's like that old song from the 80s. The gals are doing it for themselves. Do you remember that song?
Right. No, I
South
don't.
Africans are
Actually, I'm
doing it for
much younger
themselves.
than you think. Yeah.
I was just talking to somebody in the car industry recently, and they were saying if you are making cars outside of Pretoria, which is one of the kind of car hubs in South Africa, because
Yeah.
the Nissan plant is there and the BMW plant is there, and you're exporting those cars, which they do a lot. The
Used to.
old
Yeah.
way of getting them from Pretoria to Durban and onto a ship was using an organization called Transnet. So they don't do that anymore.
Ah, right. They just
They
put them on the
just
back of trucks.
they put them on the back of trucks and somehow they've made it work. It's just incredible.
Yeah, but
So,
there's a consequence, Tim. There's a
yeah,
consequence.
of
The
course.
roads
Yeah,
cannot stand that traffic. And the same applies to Colin and Pumalanga.
exactly.
It's just
Yeah,
truckloads of stuff ruining roads that weren't built
yeah.
for that purpose. Yeah.
No, it's incredible.
So,
Everything is quite short term. Though, and the problem is that the more people opt out, we've seen the same pattern in South Africa in institution after institution. The institution declines, people opt out, they find other ways of doing things, they never go back. But the institution
yeah.
itself doesn't get any smaller. It just stays there.
uh,
It becomes a gradual recipient for taxpayer cash and for borrow.
It just
Yeah, it's
becomes a
ongoing. Yeah.
center for social distribution that isn't covered in the social grant. Because if you look at
Yes.
in government and parastatal things, so much money is spent on just hiring people, regardless of the output or the capacity to
Yeah.
hire or the productivity of the hirees. And so, yeah, I was going to say boer maak 'n plan, but you can't do that anymore. And we're all making a plan, actually, and that's the truth of it.
Exactly.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
but on a more macro level, okay, I think we're borrowing and selling things. Okay, now what do I mean by that? First of all, I think we over borrowed and we celebrate our capacity to borrow. And we borrow in hard
Yes.
currency whilst we earn
Yes.
in rands. And we give security, which is tantamount to when you can't afford to borrow and you provide an
Right.
asset for security, you've essentially pre sold that asset. Okay.
Right.
So someone lends you money to buy a house and you can't afford it, you've basically sold them the house at a knockdown price at
Right.
your purchase price. What worries me is the amount of money we're borrowing willy-nilly. A lot of it might be classified as development money or that sort of willing money that comes into us because we're still considered a developing country and things of that nature. And it
Right.
worries the hell out of me that beyond the municipalities, where Treasury is now looking for help, who sits passing judgment on our balance sheet and our capacity to service that? You can't get a
Right.
loan, Tim, unless you can show how you can repay and service the loan. Those are the two tests, right? And we seem to be doing that. Why would we? Why can we? No choice.
Well, yeah, it's a ratcheting process, isn't it? It's a sort of, you borrow a little, you pay it back, you borrow a little more, so it goes on. But you said you were looking for turning points. Uh, In some ways, I see turning points, but I see quite a lot of turning points going down. And the one
Oh,
thing
God.
that happened over the last week, the kind of big, it's a sort of subterranean thing, and it's quite hard to understand. And it involves a guy called DJ Sumbody, which I think
Yeah,
is just
this is a
so
fabulous
weirdly
name.
South African. Yeah, it's, but anyway, just to update listeners, I'm sure you know all of this, but basically what happened was that this guy DJ Somebody, who is I'm a piano kind of star and is a bit of
He's definitely a
a
somebody. He's
musician.
not a
Yeah,
nobody.
he's definitely
Yeah,
so. No,
yeah,
exactly, that's right.
yeah,
But
yeah.
he was assassinated, and this has just spiraled because it doesn't seem like he was the kind of likely person to be. He wasn't involved in tenderpreneurship and all of that sort of stuff. But then what happened was that they actually found the people. They arrested three people for his murder. He was killed with an AK-47. He was shot in his car, and he had a bodyguard. His bodyguard was also killed, which is just absolutely extraordinary. But anyway, forensically, they did discover that this AK-47 has been used in 20 other crimes. All of this just makes my hair stand on end. And then, so somebody else was arrested, and then this was the reason why the assassination group was allegedly closed down, was because they were honing in on these people. And then last week, Kenny Kunene has now been suspended from his political
And
party.
subsequently resigned. Yeah.
Yeah, and because he was actually present at the house of one of the suspects when they were arrested. So basically, I think what's happening here is that South African crime is becoming institutionalized, and it's moving from randomized crime into a kind of more organized network crime, and it's involving this weird intersection between lifestyle, politics, tenders. It's a sort of this
So
mix.
I have to stop you now because you depressed me properly now. Okay, it's enough now. Stop it now. But in what you're saying is true, I think. We're moving away from
Yeah.
the rule of law to the rule of war, not only
Yes.
locally in our own little way, but globally. Look at anything on social media. I've tried to stop, and I'm going to try harder because everywhere
Right.
people are killing each other and fighting and hitting each other, and men are hitting women and women are hitting men and pulling each other's hair. And I don't know. I'd hate to believe what kind of mindset is developing in our teenagers who spend their lives on social media and what sort of picture of the world they're getting. Because it's an
Yes.
increasingly violent world where it's become flagrant. The violence in the world is almost as flagrant as the theft is in South Africa. I mean, I think the other they had something like 350 million rand was paid for mops and vacuum cleaners or some nonsense like that in
Right.
City Power the other day.
Right.
Help me. How do you possibly think? No, sorry, it was air fresheners and
Right.
mops. 335 million rand. Come on, Tim. And so if anyone goes, okay, Oaks, how are we going to get away with this? I'll tell you what.
Let's buy a lot.
How do you get away with it, man? Eh?
I
You
know,
can't.
exactly.
So there's a
But
total
it's
disregard for law.
yeah. What's interesting, listeners to our little podcast will know that sometimes we hook out a number and
Mm,
talk about it. And my number of the week
hear it coming.
is the
Yeah,
crime rate is the crime rate in the United Kingdom. So apparently there were every year in the UK in 1994 there were 20 million crimes reported. Okay, that's
right.
1994. Okay, so now I ask you to guess what that number is, knowing that you probably won't know.
Double
Total
it
number
for
of crimes.
starters. I'd go 40 million.
Okay, no, 5 million. the
What?
crimes in Europe, the total number of crimes in all European countries and America, by the way, has just plummeted
Tim,
in
I
30
think there was
years.
a definition there that you've glossed over. You said the
Right.
number of reported crimes. Now, there
No,
are two
well, I
things
mean,
you have to go to. You have to go and test that statistic's validity because it's reported crimes, not just
yes.
crimes that are happening. And it's also about what constitutes the definition of a crime nowadays
Right.
compared to 1994. And so I can't believe that Europe is a quarter as violent as it was 30 years ago because
Well,
maybe it's just we see more of it. I
no, the difference is that housebreaking and robbery have
It's no longer a
declined,
crime.
and yeah, so it's not that violent crime hasn't decreased, but if you're just talking about all crimes, the whole basket, I don't know whether the number's true or not. But just for comparison, the murder rate, I just hooked out the murder rate for South Africa. This is per 100,000 people. In 2014, the murder rate was 32 per 100,000. It's
No.
now around about 43. So in the past decade, the murder rate has gone up 25%. Yeah, I know.
All right,
This is
well, we've got
bad.
clear blue skies. We got that. We got that. We got clear.
Yeah, we've
Let's
got
click on
that.
to what we've got. You know,
Yes.
yeah, I, I really don't know. You know what I was thinking? I watched
Oh,
the
yeah?
senior golf open, which is the sort of has-beens version of the Open golf tournament, which is one of the majors. And I was watching because Ernie Els was playing and all these guys with Tiff Christen, and the guy won by a couple of strokes. Okay, if you
Right.
understand golf. Now, I started figuring out because it's a 4-day tournament. Okay, I started figuring out how much better you are than the guy that came second if you win by one stroke on a
Right.
golf tournament. Okay, and you are
Okay.
about 0.35% better than him. Well, okay,
Wow.
that's the margin.
Amazing.
Over 4 days, you are
Okay.
one stroke, depending on the par of the course, but you are one
Yes.
stroke better over 280 strokes. Okay. So
Right.
that's quite a narrow victory, that you have to
Okay.
squeeze out over hundreds and hundreds of inches. I just thought that was interesting. We won World Cups with 1 point, but in terms of margin, they're trivial by comparison to golf. Now,
Oh,
Tim,
that's
you've
incredible.
got to have absolutely nothing to do on a Sunday afternoon to work that statistic out. Okay.
Okay. Can I tell
Hey,
you my
get a
golf
life,
joke?
Barnes, for God's sake, man. Hey, tell me a golf joke. Go on.
Okay. So now, you know what the art of golf is?
No, I don't.
Okay. The art of golf is that you place a very small ball on an extremely large ball, and then you try and
Yeah.
hit the small ball and not the large ball.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah,
not
they
a very
often
good joke,
say,
but it is clean. You
yeah,
know, that counts for something,
yeah, yeah.
surely.
Well, they say when you duff a shot, you hit the big ball first. Yeah, that's exactly right today. All
Yes,
right, have
yes,
a
yes.
lucky week. We're heading into the second half of the year at a hell of a pace. I don't know. Time
And-
is, I'm afraid, flying. It's you know why
no,
time
no, it's
flies as you get older, Tim. It's because
right.
every minute or unit of time is a smaller percentage of your
That is so true.
get past a
Right.
certain age, you better start net present valuing your life, okay? And you better realize
Yes.
that the next
Okay.
5 years are probably going to be better than the last 5 years, okay?
Okay.
So have a go,
Okay. Good.
listeners.
Okay.
Have a
Let's
go,
do that.
okay? Yeah, okay. Cheers, guys.
Well, please do comment and respond to our podcasts. We're thrilled to be part of your lives. Thank you very much for listening.
Cheers, cheers.